Welcome to American Education FM, everybody. I'm Dr. Sean Brooks. Welcome back, everyone. Okay, this is kind of a two-part episode here. In the first, I would say at least half of this episode, I'm going to be covering a number of different recent topics here having to do with global tyranny, whether it again be at the local level, the state level, the federal level, and then, of course, throughout numerous countries, and how the enemy is really showing their hand very quickly, and of course now more than ever. But what it's also doing, as you might expect, is it's ramping up people's blood pressure. Now, first of all, that's not always a bad thing. However, in the middle of all of this, it's always good to sort of slow down, take a deep breath, and essentially just very basically remind yourselves of some of the things, of course, that have happened in the past, what's currently going on now, and what's likely to happen here in the future. And we can use 2020 as a nice barometer, I think, for a lot of this. Certainly when it comes to the raising and lowering of pressure that certainly exists within society here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through a number of different examples first with that at the forefront of this episode, and then at the tail end of this episode, I have scheduled a conversation with a Canadian woman by the name of Christine, who has been arrested, detained, cited, allowed to go home for making tweets. That's it. So again, you're going to hear firsthand from an individual in Canada who was arrested for simply making tweets. Again, free speech does not exist everywhere. Many of us know this, but unfortunately, the most corrupt governments and the most tyrannical are cracking down right now on everyday individuals, regardless of where they live. Certainly in the UK and in Europe, we know that's been going on for quite some time, and we know it's been going on in Canada as well. But she's going to be on, hopefully, here at the end, and she's going to be discussing basically everything that's happened with her this entire time. I will include her links in the description below. Again, she had her phone confiscated, apparently. She was given basically a cheap cell phone to use. She's not allowed to post on the internet, but through a listener and contributor to my show, who of course reached out to me and said, "Hey, are you familiar with this individual?" I said, "No." And then they said, "Well, here's their story. Would you like to have them on?" And I said, "Absolutely." So I said, "Give them my information." They called me yesterday. We talked, and I hope to bring you that here as soon as we wrap all of this up and we have our conversation. But definitely stay tuned for that toward the end of this. And again, make sure and look in the description below for all of their links. Again, I believe they have a Give, Send, Go page as well. They're also still on Twitter, if I'm not mistaken. And there you have it. So again, this tyranny exists everywhere, and it's all around us, and it's surrounding us on a constant basis. And yes, it does depend on where you live. However, there's a great deal of foreshadowing taking place right now as to what's coming down the line. And again, we have to take into account who is really the commander-in-chief right now, and also who is allowed to be able to play president of the United States in America right now, too. Again, the level of deception that's going on right now is a level that I'm not sure we've ever seen before. It's existed in the past to great deals, and many of us are very well aware of that deception and all of those events and everything that's led up to them now, and a number of other things, but the constant deception that's taking place here today is overwhelming. And again, it's part of what gets people's blood pressure up. But we have a responsibility to just slow down, take a deep breath, think clearly, and then operate accordingly. So again, what I plan on doing throughout this episode also is just making some basic reminders of things I think that we need to consider and always consider. And yes, school is a big part of it. And removing your children from these environments is a big part of it, and I have examples to bring up with that also. So, without further ado, allow me to get into this here. First of all, let me make a few comments regarding the Donald Trump-Elon Musk conversation that took place on X. I, of course, have an X account. It's American Education FM. I believe it's at American Ed FM. You can go over there and check it out if you want. I hardly ever post over there. The only thing I post over there is my show, the war videos, and then maybe my Substack articles, and that's about it. Of which I plan on having 2 Substack articles this week. So keep an eye out for those as well. With that said, as the interview or conversation or talk or what have you was taking place or beginning to take place, there, of course, was numerous conversations about X being attacked digitally, cyber attacks, people trying to shut it down, a number of other things. That's quite possible, and I don't doubt that. And it certainly came from our own government, would certainly be one of the largest suspects. Foreign governments working with our government, because they do that all of the time too. And that's, that's not surprising. And there's also the angle, of course, that that's not what happened, and that it was just used again to sort of stoke the flames and get everybody's blood pressure up, as if to say, they don't want Donald Trump and Elon Musk to have a conversation. There's a lot going on with them individually and collectively. I'm certain of that. And a lot of people have written about this and commented on this. And I'm not sure where to fall in line with all of it. I find it next to impossible, as even Whitney Webb has stated, that someone like Elon Musk does not purchase something like X on his own. That's next to impossible. That usually gets done through government backing or through other contracts, through other government agencies. And then there are certain agreements that are made, and so on and so on. Well, if Donald Trump is still the commander-in-chief, which we believe him to be and frankly know him to be, then it would make sense that both he and Elon Musk potentially own Twitter or X together. It's possible they own it separately, but either way, it's not run by a singular individual with a giant, with a giant pocketbook. That's completely impossible. Again, it's government kickbacks and government contracts that would allow the sale for something like that, and certainly allow for the ownership of something like that, not to mention bankrolling it. So, with all of that aside, whether it's even relevant or not, there's a very sad societal aspect of all of that conversation that I saw taking place in real live time that was manipulative, but also at the exact same time, it was much like a popularity contest taking place in real time among the so-called awake. And let me sort of break this down as it was happening and sort of what I was observing. First of all, everybody, not everybody clearly, but a lot of people were trying to get on to hear what the conversation was about. Just in a quick summary, the conversation was not new. I listened to the conversation. There was nothing new in it. There were no revelations. There was a lot of odd things that were said kind of back and forth. Donald Trump getting the distance wrong on particular shots, whether he got it wrong or not. Maybe he's being accurate, but it was something like during their conversation about the shooting at his rally, there were comments that he made about how one of his snipers shot the person from 400 yards away. Well, that's the exact opposite of everything that anybody has ever seen or heard in the mainstream media. That no one was 400 yards away in any kind of a shooting. Again, it's minuscule when it comes to deception or misdirection or whatever it was designed to be, and I'm really not even interested in it, because again, to me, that's not the bigger picture. The bigger picture is actually something that's been missing from a lot of the even online conversations that I've seen here, and I made this comment on my own originally without, again, a lot of people even commenting on it. Or even responding to it, and I certainly didn't read these comments anywhere else. Again, I'm not patting myself on the back. I'm just saying, let's think long term here, and what this conversation was really about. This conversation was using a digital technology tool. It was using a counter, a digital counter, like a clicker, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and all the people listening in and making comments and sharing and retweeting and responding, etc., etc. The entire thing, in my opinion, is being used as future evidence in court for a stolen election. A stolen election from the media and or the Democrat Party. Because during that entire interaction, there were tens of millions, upwards of 70 plus million people ultimately listening, sharing, responding, again, retweeting, commenting, you name it. That's a bunch of people. So long-term plan, first and foremost, is that that's going to be used, in my opinion, potentially, as future evidence in court in certain swing states where particular laws are going to be broken regarding voting and the voter fraud that's going to take place. Now, Patrick Bet David will never hear this because he doesn't think voter fraud exists, as you heard me describe in the last episode, so this is way over his head. But either way, what was just used during that conversation was not the conversation per se. The conversation was for the plebes. It was for the normies. It was for the kids who want to be popular on X, like the Benny Johnsons of the world and whatever else. It was for all of those normies. It was for them. It wasn't for any analyst or researcher looking at it from a different dimension. Again, in summary, I believe that it was used again as a digital counter. It was just used to tally the number of people that were paying attention. And then the second dimension of it is, it's arguably one of the more valid polls that you'll ever see, ever, when it comes to presidential candidates. So again, Patrick Bet David believes that Kamala Harris is winning in the polls by 2 points, 2 percentage points. Again, he's retarded. But with that aside, what he doesn't understand is that X conversation just blew all of that out of the water. It blew all of the polling out of the water. Because the invitation now has been sent to Kamala Harris to participate in an X conversation with Elon Musk. And have people show up and listen in, and contribute and repost and comment and blah, blah, blah. She's not going to do that. And she doesn't have to. She's allegedly already accepted a debate with Donald Trump in September now, again. So if that takes place, so be it. But they've already designed the stolen election. With that said, keep in mind, this is the reminder also, that this is a sting operation. And if this is a sting operation, and the good guys are doing particular things and putting things in a particular order in order to catch the bad guys scheming, meddling, and doing whatever they're doing, under the legislation and the executive orders that have been signed, they can tap into their communications anytime they want and catch them having conversations about anything that they want. And if they have these people recording one another and communicating back and forth, even in private settings, with the amount of surveillance that exists, I mean, let's face it, everybody's cell phone, Apple Watch, computer, microphone, etc., wireless internet of bodies, and the whole wireless body area network that exists, it's a giant tracking device. So they can catch these people having conversations about anything they want, whenever they want. I mean, we have no Fourth Amendment. It's gone. So let's just, throw that out the window because it doesn't exist. Everybody's being tracked. Everybody's being traced. Everybody's being monitored. So are the bad guys. So again, if this is a sting operation, with every move that's getting made, the conversation that's happening on the bad guy's side is getting caught. And then any move that they make is also getting caught, and it's getting recorded, and it's being overheard, which would have to allow the good guys to then pre-plan their next move in advance, knowing what the bad guys have in store. Basically, the bad guys are screwed one way or another. However, this is another dimension. It doesn't mean that we are in the clear. Because we're not. We're at war. We are 100% at war here. So, during the conversation that was taking place on X, I found it pathetic that, again, the so-called awake people were all attempting to get in on the conversation and be the first to have their ex profile picture next to Elon Musk's and Donald Trump's, as if to take screenshots of it and then pat themselves on the back and stick their nose up in the air like it matters. It doesn't matter. They're not even looking into the conversation from an analytical standpoint like I just described a second ago. All they're interested in are clicks, likes, shares, and blah, blah, blah. They're not looking at what could potentially be the much bigger picture here. So I wanted to not plant that seed with you, but I wanted you to just consider that's highly possible that that's exactly what was taking place. Now, in response to this, Harris and Walls put out the following bulletin, I guess, is whatever you would call it, the following message. They said, quote, "Right now, Elon Musk is interviewing Donald Trump live on Twitter. We're not calling it X." I don't know why they would say that. It says it's not enough that Musk has pledged to donate millions of dollars to help re-elect Trump. He's using his purchased platform, one of the largest social media sites in the world, to spread Trump's unhinged and hateful agenda to millions of users. If that's all you need to hear, chip in $25 now to help Kamala and Tim have the resources to respond to their lies. Otherwise, let us remind you why this is a big deal. The richest person in the world is a lackey for Team MAGA. Musk already ruined Twitter by allowing hate speech and disinformation to flood the platform. Now, Musk is using his vast fortune and broad reach to try and control our democracy, unquote. There may have been more in the post, I'm not sure, but that's the post that I have in front of me right now. Either way, it doesn't matter. Again, it's just a basic political response that has to be made, because if they don't make it, then they look foolish. Even with that aside now, in another dimension down deeper, I'm not hearing people bring this up, let alone spend any great deal of time talking about it, and it's the simple fact that Kamala Harris is now, right now, the first illegal, emphasis on the word illegal female president of the United States, times 2. Not only is she the first illegal president because Joe Biden wasn't legally president, I mean, that's number one, but she's an illegal. She's an anchor baby. So not only is she taking over an illegal position that existed before her, but now she's actually the illegal president of the United States because a watered-down version of the 25th Amendment just took place with Joe Biden, as I've brought up on the show before. That's what transpired here. She is, right now, an illegal president of the United States. Joe Biden isn't doing anything. He's not calling any shots. She's in charge. But they're not telling you that. Congress isn't telling you that. The Senate's not telling you that. Her cabinet isn't telling her that, or isn't telling us that, rather. They're not going to tell anybody because they don't have to tell anybody. I mean, you would think that they would in an honest society. In an open and free society, they would certainly do so, but they're not doing that now. So again, Kamala Harris just finished herself off permanently. And I'm talking like Gitmo finished herself off, assuming that she's not completely owned by the good guys in some way, and she's the puppet of the good guys. Because she's saying some of the most outlandish shit you could possibly imagine right now. She was at a rally, or it wasn't even a rally. She was on some stage the other day, and she was asked the question about what she was going to do about the detainees at the border, all these illegal aliens. And she says, we're going to let them all loose. We're going to let them all go into the United States because that's the lawful thing to do. Well, she could do that right now if she wanted to, because she's still in office. And that's already happening anyway, which means her saying that is just her being redundant. It's just her being repetitive. I mean, that's it. So again, the comment doesn't make any sense because she's already doing it. And they are already doing that. But unfortunately, that comment got applause in the room as the the communist sheep were all clapping like seals, and they have no idea that, of course, communism ends with their head up against a brick wall and a bullet in the side of it, or in the back of it, or in the front of it. I mean, these people don't get this. But all of that is taking place right now, again, on multiple different dimensions. And what I'm always trying to do is I'm just trying to pay attention to what people aren't talking about. That they look at the face value thing, and when everybody runs like a moth to the flame, I stand back and I go, wait a minute. Everybody's running like a moth to the flame over here, so maybe I should turn around and look in the opposite direction, or look above them, below them, and see what's actually taking place in other areas. I'll add this one on too. During the Elon Musk-Trump conversation, there was a link that was going out, and even Josiah Richwine sent it to me, and it was from, let's see, what was it? It was from YouTube. It was a YouTube link where it claimed that they were going to air the conversation on YouTube. And when he sent it to me, he goes, I don't trust YouTube to carry this conversation, so we'll see what this is all about. It wasn't anything. In fact, what it was, which was beyond bizarre, is it was Elon Musk on a stage somewhere at his X factory, or his Tesla factory, or wherever the hell he was. And it was an AI image of his face and his mouth not moving to the recorded words fast enough. And then there was edited video and spliced video that you could clearly see that was being taken from a distance that was different than the footage that was being taken up front. So if anybody was watching this on YouTube, whatever this was and whoever put it out, it wasn't the conversation as advertised between Trump and Elon Musk. It was basically an AI image of Elon having an AI audio discussion about his own products, and a little bit of Donald Trump, and a little bit of Kamala Harris, and a number of other things. It was his voice that was basically, again, being superimposed on his body. If that video still exists on YouTube, you can go and look it up. It was beyond bizarre, because I immediately thought, wait a minute, this isn't the Trump-Elon Musk conversation, that's number one. But number two, this is artificial intelligence. This is AI being used right now for some reason. Again, I don't know if it was to wake somebody up or what it was. And it wasn't even a cable glitch of any kind. It wasn't like slow internet. It was painfully obvious that it was artificial intelligence. So somebody was having some fun. Somebody was playing around in the old digital sphere there. And it was interesting. But then eventually I bounced over to InfoWars, and then eventually I got on X, and then on my own X account, and then I listened to it. But either way, there's a lot of sensationalism going on right now, and a lot of people, again, ramping up the flames and stoking the flames. Just to calm everybody very quickly, and I don't know if this will calm people or not, but just as a basic reminder again, it's a good idea to have storable food and storable water. I'm not shilling for any particular company. What company and how you acquire all of that, that's completely up to you. I leave that up to you. I'm not going to lead you in one direction or another. You need to figure that out. But that's something that everybody should be doing. And I'll lead you in this direction too. And again, I don't know if this guy is legit or not, but you may recall that I played audio from this guy. He's a pastor, and he claimed to have a premonition about Donald Trump being shot, and that was 3 months ago. That was over 3 months ago now. That his audio of him talking about that was over 3 months ago. It was 3 months before Donald Trump was shot at. He has a YouTube channel, and he consistently makes mention of a few things that he claims that God is telling him to do. He's basically said a couple of things that I think are certainly worth noting, and it's not necessarily even anything that's new. It's things that have been brought up here on this show and a number of other shows, and I'm certain it's things that you've thought about also. But he basically said that what God was showing him is that he was saying that God was looking at a giant field of sheep. He said some of the sheep were in the light and some of the sheep were in the dark. And he was looking at them and he was saying, last call. Last call. And then Christ just kept saying last call to this field of sheep. So he goes in depth as to what he thinks that means, and I'll leave that up to you, assuming that, again, that's all legit. But what he also discussed very recently is he brought up again something that numerous people have pontificated about for quite some time, which is food shortages and planned food shortages and empty shelves in stores. And that when that happens, depending on the area where you live, you're going to see varying degrees of illegality and varying degrees of chaos. So what he describes is he describes armed guards outside of big box stores that are either being looted or have been looted or are about to be looted and things of that nature. So whether it be, again, National Guard, police, whomever, something like that. And then he was basically told by Christ, so he said, that the time period of there being potentially food shortages would last longer than what people think, that it wouldn't be like a week or 2 weeks, that it would be far longer than that. So again, I don't know if the guy's fear-mongering. I don't know that. What I do know is from, and he again very well could be very legit and just warning people, to be prepared and be vigilant. And I'm 100% for that. I mean, God talks to us, for those of us who know how to listen to him, and he moves us in particular directions, and all of that's very real. I'm not doubting that at all. With that said, I just think that it's always important for people to prepare. Again, people should have guns. They should have ammunition. Even Emerald Robinson was on X saying this exact same thing. Now, from a historic perspective also, this is communism. This is what Bolshevistic communism, Marxism, has to offer. And no, it's not fascism, as Naomi Wolf on Alex Jones's show the other day would lead people to believe. Well, it's a fascist regime that we're watching. No. This isn't fascism. You're not watching a brotherhood of a collective for the betterment of a nation and its people. You're watching the opposite. You're watching what fascism tried to destroy. And unfortunately, communism was a bit stronger. So what we're watching now is actual communism. It exists everywhere. It's all over the place. And on all levels of the spectrum, both from a left and a right dynamic, but also an up and a down dimensional perspective, you're seeing all of the old tricks get played again and all the old methods get reintroduced again into society. Again, in order to ritualize the trauma over and over again for numerous individuals. The problem is that many people don't look a little deeper into it and ask themselves, why is it happening this way? What is actually going on? So again, from a historic perspective, we are watching communism right now take over. There's no doubt about it. And then you're watching the communists slither around and shout at the top of their lungs, justifying their own communism. Now again, let me give you just one brief example. In fact, I have a number of examples here. And again, these are current examples. There was this just today from the Gateway Pundit. Again, my apologies on the reference here, but this had to do with Mesa County, Colorado election clerk, Tina Peters. And she was arrested for not getting rid of the voter rolls and the old voter registration from the 2020 election. Now, she had a legal responsibility to keep them, and she had a legal responsibility to keep them when there was suspected fraud. So those are two separate reasons to keep them, but she was doing exactly what she was lawfully allowed to do. Well, now she's been sentenced. She's been criminally found guilty in a court of law by a jury of her so-called peers, and this is what it is. So it says in February of 2022, she was interrupted at a local restaurant by police and arrested on some garbage charges. It says on Monday, Peters was convicted on 3 counts of attempting to influence a public servant and 1 count of conspiracy to commit criminal impersonation. Again, I don't know what any of this has to do with that, but it sounds like somebody's making up laws here or making up charges. It says additionally, she faced convictions for first-degree official misconduct, violation of duty, and failure to comply with an order from the Secretary of State, each a misdemeanor, according to CPR News. The jury found Peters not guilty on 3 charges: criminal impersonation, conspiracy to commit criminal impersonation, and identity theft. It says Peters' defense team argued that her actions were within her authority as she sought to preserve what she believed were critical election records. Her sentencing is scheduled for October 3rd. Basically, she can face up to 25 plus years in prison. It says, as a jury has found Tina Peters guilty of 7 of the 10 counts related to a 2021 breach of the Mesa County election system. So she faces up to 6 years in prison on each of her top 3 felony convictions and up to 18 months for conspiracy to commit criminal impersonation. Each of her 3 misdemeanor convictions carries up to 6 months in jail. So again, this is communism. You have judge, jury, executioner all on the same side going after someone who apparently had a legal responsibility to keep these votes in place and keep the records in place for further future investigation, even though she was ordered by the corrupt Secretary of State in Colorado, to get rid of them. So, again, this is one massive example that the justice system does not exist. There is no ethical justice of any kind whatsoever. Now, kind of shifting gears here, but again, same avenue. There was this. I greatly respect Michael Yon as a war correspondent. The guy knows a great deal of information. He's traveled a lot of places, done a lot of stuff. And he put this message out and he was repeating what someone else was saying about the Paris Olympics and that how it was a declaration of the opening of the Second French Revolution. So give this a listen. Here's what he said on X and Gab and a number of other social media platforms, I'm sure. He said himself the following quote, "This is absolutely accurate." Now he was responding to the post that I'll read next. He said, "This is absolutely accurate. I just followed this retired military officer after seeing this one post. Except Rwanda-style massacres in Ireland, UK, and more." Or he said, expect Rwanda-style massacres in Ireland, UK, and more. I've been publishing similar and saying similar in many interviews. I've been over to Ireland, both UK, across Europe, America, and more, looking at this firsthand. Genocides unfolding. This man sees it and says it. The individual who says the following here is a Stephen Coughlin. So on X, his account is at S_Coughlin_DC. And here's what he said. He said, quote, "As noted, I think the opening of the Paris Olympics was the declaration of the opening of the Second French Revolution. I'm serious. If you think this is being academic, quote unquote, you're sorely wrong. If you don't understand what is meant, BC being an academic point of view only, that sort, quote unquote, of people find answers looking there, and besides, we already know what's really going on. You're churning what you seek to defend into dust. You are part of the dialectical destruction of everything you say you value. How it is that people engaged in information operations or on our side pretend to think the CIR, critical information requirements, of that activity, information, can be cast aside if someone calls it academic, quote unquote. It's like convincing a military regiment that they don't need scouts because they already have a map. Those people lead by a self-hating Western leadership class. Who we are, self-aware, we don't always know who they are. The PSTB that want Western civilization destroyed, along with the peoples, ethnos, who built it, know exactly what was signaled WRT, the opening ceremonies. Since then, a large uptick in public blade attacks. Videos showing whole groups of immigrants in UK town centers brandishing blades in clear preparation to attack the citizenry, which the reporting of the UK authorities call incitement and a hate crime that they will ruthlessly crack down on. Large-scale ISIS-like attacks on whole towns in Bangladesh, escalation of violence against the North American cities and campuses, all after the opening ceremony. There's more. If you think a recognition that the French Revolution counts as nothing more than a bit of disconnected trivia from the real thing, complete with the severed head of Marie Antoinette by guillotine, then your understanding of the real thing is desecrated from the telos that's driving it to its perfection. And you're batting for their team. And that's just the cost of fighting a culture, religion killing, dialectical attack while sustaining an abiding commitment to not understanding it. That's what the two Chinese colonels meant in unrestricted warfare, quote unquote, when saying 25 years ago that they could destroy America through political warfare, Maoist insurgency. And the American national security establishment lacked the willingness or ability to figure out, unquote. Okay. I disagree with one thing there, a massive thing as a matter of fact. It's not Maoist insurgency, it's Jewish. And it's not that American national security establishment lacked the willing or ability to figure it out. It's because the American national security establishment in America is Jewish. That's why. Again, Mao wasn't a communist. He was taught communism. He was a horrible person, but he was taught how to implement communism back then and Bolshevik tactics back then that, of course, are now being used worldwide in numerous governments. That's called global government. That's called communism. And who created communism? Jews did. Satanic Jews created communism. The Khazarian Mafia. They're the ones responsible. So if he's calling the French Olympics the next French Revolution, either in a bad direction, as if to say they did all of their perverse things at the Olympics, which is exactly what they're basically trying to tell you, that they think that they've won. Well, I think something else is about to happen here. I think something else has to happen, or else triggers are going to get pulled. And the fighting and the death will be something that even the police and your local police officer cannot comprehend. It's going to be a level of chaos on a country-to-country basis, again, the likes of which people can't possibly imagine. Now, let's run a scenario through very quickly. Let's say that Donald Trump wins, and let's say that as a retaliatory method from a political standpoint, he uses tariffs as a means to penalize companies and penalize countries and their governments, which theoretically is the entire EU, into complying with particular political measures among the people within their own society, because they all have stolen elections also. All of their elections are fraudulent. The Jewish lobby certainly controls both sides of the political spectrum in most of those foreign countries to begin with. So, do you actually believe that something like a tariff and financially penalizing these countries more would be the solution to those countries' real problems? I don't think so. Again, it's the Jewish communist method to use money as a weapon against the people. If Donald Trump were to do that, he would be sending those people in those countries further into debt and into mass murder than they already are. He would literally be starving them to death and forcing them to take to the streets and rob their own stores in their own towns and cities. And then, of course, come face to face with all of the illegals that are there. that would pop off a war the likes of which people can't possibly imagine. Unless, of course, there are groups of good guys within those countries working behind the scenes, gathering information and intel to be used against the people who are controlling those countries for nefarious reasons. But if that doesn't take over in a good way, and if that doesn't happen, you're going to see bloodshed, a lot of it. Because again, from a historic standpoint, we have to consider something here. And this is where a lot of these so-called historians are going to get this one wrong, and they'll even disagree with this, even though it's factually accurate. Adolf Hitler liberated countries in Europe. He didn't invade them. That word invade gets used. That's not true. He liberated them from communism. That's what he was doing. He was showing up with all his homies. He was being applauded by endless people in those countries who knew that their countries were degenerate, poor, not thriving, and on a downward communistic slide that they were having a hard time getting out of. That's a fact. There's no disputing that. But as that was happening, he was meeting with some of their political leadership and saying, you have a choice to make. You either free your people or we'll get rid of you and we'll free them. So what's it going to be? Again, he wasn't taking over these countries, so to speak, and liberating these towns and cities and governments for the purpose of ruling them forever and making sure that, quote unquote, everybody speaks German. That wasn't it. He wanted the French to be the French, the Spanish to be the Spanish, the Portuguese to be the Portuguese, the Italians to be the Italians. That's not the way it is now, is it? It doesn't exist like that now. And my point here is this. From a historic standpoint, that's the only way that on a global scale, this whole thing gets fixed. There have to be groups of good people who aren't bought and sold by the Jewish lobby, who know them to be the real enemy, going from country to country and meeting with those individuals who are there and saying, very simply, we have a metaphorical gun to your head. You have a choice to make. You die right here, right now, for being guilty of high crimes, misdemeanors, and genocide of your own people in your own country. Or you reverse all of your policies right here, right now, by signing this piece of paper. And then a memo goes out to every single law enforcement agency and your entire military, and you move from one end of your country to the other, and you get rid of every illegal, and you get rid of every criminal. And you send them back to where they came. And then you close your borders permanently. That's really, in my opinion, my humble opinion, that's really one of the only ways that this gets fixed. I say one of because there's this bubble of unknowing scenarios that I just don't know about. I'm not going to claim I have it all figured out. I don't. I'm just looking at it from a historic standpoint. Again, we know that by they, of course, the Jewish lobby has wanted to flood all of these foreign countries with Africans. We know that. And Middle Easterners, and you name it. They want whites eliminated. We know that. How does that get really reversed? How does it really get reversed? It gets reversed by every country getting rid of all of them. But they're not going to do it on their own. They're not going to do it in Canada, not with Trudeau in charge, and not even with his alleged, opposite politician, what the hell is his name? Polivier, something like that? He's not going to do anything about it either. He's so stupid up in Canada that he would say something like multiculturalism makes Canada strong. It clearly doesn't. Clearly it doesn't. And again, these police forces are equally as guilty of this genocide because of the people that they're locking up, the sentences that they're giving people. So yeah, there's a lot of things that have to get fixed, but The guillotines have to come out. Some people are just going to have to die. That has to happen. Because that's what happened. That's what's happened in history. You don't liberate countries by just shaking hands and signing papers. There has to be blood that has to be spilled. Thomas Jefferson very famously said it himself all the way back then in the founding of our country, that the tree of liberty is thirsty from time to time and it needs to be fed. It's not exactly what he said, but you get what I'm saying. This has to take place. People don't think that this can happen because, unfortunately, we have people still taking vacations to foreign countries, and they have no idea that those countries are at war. That their own people are at war with their own governments. Here's one example. Here's an individual in the UK. Sellafield worker jailed after sharing offensive Facebook posts. It says prosecutor George Shelley said that a man with the last name Dunn, let me see if I can get his first name here. Nope, don't know his first name. His last name is Dunn. Said that Dunn had posted 3 separate images. The first one is an Englishman. The first one shows a group of men, Asian in appearance, at Ergmont Crab Fair 2025 with the caption, "Coming to a town near you." The second also showed a group of men, Asian in appearance, leaving a boat on a Whitehaven beach. This, said Mr. Shelley, had the caption, quote, "When it's on your turf, then what?" Unquote. A final image showed a group of men, again Asian in appearance, wielding knives in front of the Palace of Westminster. It says there was also a crying white child with a Union flag t-shirt. This was also captioned, said Mr. Shelley, with the wording, "Coming to a town near you," unquote. This guy faces, I believe, let's see, blah, blah, blah. He posted 3 memes over 2 days showing real images of Asian gangs with the word "coming to a town near you." That's it. 12 weeks in jail. 12 weeks. 3 months. This is communism. Communism wants native countrymen, in particular whites, dead and or out of the way. Because if they're arrested, they're out of the way. If they're dead, they're out of the way. And if they're out of the way, that makes more room for whom exactly? Illegals. It makes more room for the enemy. Every single government in the world right now is killing their own people in their own countries. You can't vote your way out of that. They control the voting. Which means what? What comes next? It's not an accident that these countries are unarmed either. That was a giant on purpose. That was a pre-planned on purpose. The same thing is happening in Australia. The same thing is happening lots of places. These are unarmed citizens at the whim of the so-called crown. Also not an accident. Australia is owned by the so-called Crown of England. Canada is as well. They take pledges of allegiance to the King of England. So again, these are our enemies. These are the enemies to freedom, not the people within who want to be free. They are not our enemy. They're our ally, but they're unarmed by and large. And again, if they aren't unarmed and they are lawfully owning or possessing a gun, then they'll do whatever they have to do to find some ticky-tack regulation or even law that a citizen broke in order to make sure that they no longer possess a firearm or any kind of a sharp weapon of some kind. Again, the people not paying attention to this are the ones that are going to be victimized first. We're all being victimized. It's just happening at different dimensions on different levels of consciousness. We know that we are better prepared than the people who are still taking vacations. We know that we are better prepared than the people who are not acting appropriately and continuing to send their children to American schools, for example. We're better prepared than those people. Those people have no idea what's going on. Those people still go to baseball games and buy $16 beers and $7 hot dogs. Those people aren't going to make it. Again, what's coming, whatever it is that's coming next, is not going to be for everyone. As so saith the Q posts, the end won't be for everyone. It's not going to be. The violence will pop off in cities first. It just will. But what will happen, and I'll run through a quick scenario with you just to give you my opinion on the varying degrees of what would happen. And I'm getting back now to, the food shortage kind of thing and the old toilet paper 2.0 scenario. If something like that were to happen again, but only amped up even more, it would become worse in the cities first. Everybody knows that. But the shelves would start to go empty even in small towns like the university town where I live. It's a rural university town. Same thing. We have a Walmart here. It's the Wild West, but it's the OK Corral, as I like to call it. But either way, again, the shelves would go bare. But would the robbing take place, or would looting actually take place more so than what already goes on? It would probably increase a little bit at the smaller Walmarts or the smaller box stores and grocery stores. More people would go in, and more people would steal. They would just hide things in their pockets or under their sweatshirts or their coats or in their bag or whatever, and then they would leave, and then they would just leave because there wouldn't be enough employees to stop everybody. And there wouldn't be enough police to stop everybody. And certainly people wouldn't get charged. Yeah, they might be on camera, but the police would be overwhelmed. Because let's face it, police are always overwhelmed. They're not in a position to really catch up on anything that they're really doing. They can't. It's impossible. So when the temperature of society amps up because of things that are going on in society and around the world, situationally speaking, basically, and sort of course, politically and everything else. But when that temperature increases just a few degrees, you've seen exactly what people do and how people behave. Again, it goes right back to 2020, not just with the toilet paper stuff, but it goes back to 2020 with you have to stand here, you have to wear this mask, you have to do this, you have to do that. I think people are over that by and large, which means desperation is going to kick in now. It's not a willingness to follow the rules, because the rules have been shown to be completely unconstitutional, completely immoral, and a total lie. Which means, again, when money and food are on the line, people will steal. People will rob other people. People will get killed. But this will happen more in mass in a city area and a city environment than, say, a rural or a small town environment. And there has to be a race element to this also. Whether you agree with it or not is almost irrelevant. It's a real thing. In the darker areas of America, those places are going to see more crime as opposed to the whiter areas of America. And that is going to ramp itself up even more. And then, of course, when they're done robbing themselves and each other, where are the darker areas of society going to go to get what they need? They're going to go to the whiter areas of society. And they'll move in packs. It's not going to be one person walking around by themselves looking to rob somebody. That might be the case, and it probably would be in some scenarios. But by and large, they do it together. You've seen the videos. Blacks don't go into convenience stores and rob them 2 or 3 at a time. They overwhelm the entire convenience store with 50 to 100 people. But society's been pre-programmed to already do this, haven't they? Why do you think they call it Black Friday? Look what happens the day after Thanksgiving. Society's been told that rushing the door to get something you want is normal behavior. Which means, again, when they really need something, not for materialistic purposes, but for survival, you'd better believe that's going to happen. That's an area of our society that we have not seen yet. We haven't seen that yet. That's something that we have to see, unfortunately. It's going to be disturbing, and people are going to die, which means your movement, if you want to stay safer, would probably have to be limited. You would want to limit your movement to some extent. Just goes back to being prepared and being vigilant. Carry a gun, carry a knife. If you don't own a pair of handcuffs, Smith & Wesson steel handcuffs, I highly recommend them. If you have to detain somebody, detain them. I'm not kidding. Zip ties are fine too. I've got those also in a bug-out bag of mine in the trunk of my car, just in case. But I'm also not going to be moving around if something like this pops off. I'm not going to be, going from house to house and knocking on people's doors and asking if they're okay. I'm not going to be going, driving around and being like, hey, I wonder if I can go over here and see this or see that. People will generally want to do what makes sense, which is you stay put or you make your movements very limited. And your head is on a swivel, hopefully more than during a situation like that, more than it already would be. Traveling at night would probably be a bad idea. A number of other things. But these are things that people need to think about. It doesn't mean everybody has to get their blood pressure up about it, because there's things that we can do every single day to make ourselves more vigilant. But again, much like Cliff High pays attention to the verbiage that gets used in online environments from individuals and allegedly tracks that information and what people are doing and how that temperature gets raised. Anybody can do that. I do the exact same thing. That's why I bring things to people's attention here on this show based on things that I'm seeing, reading, hearing, and watching. Now, again, it's possible it's all mass manipulation, and that's the way that it is. But then again, the eyes don't lie. If you're seeing prices go up, if you're seeing more and more foreign individuals around where you live, if you're seeing a level of brainwashing continue to exist among a great deal of the masses who have no idea what's going on, but at the exact same time, you're also seeing gun purchases dramatically increase, as apparently this is the July, of this year, was the 6th month in a row with 1 million new gun registrations in the United States of America. Now, we can hope, and we would have to hope, that those are legal citizens. But then again, who's really purchasing the weapons and who are they for? That's another question. Because again, the flip side of that coin is that we know that they're bringing in military-aged men from foreign countries, and many of them are criminals. So again, to not be vigilant right now and to not walk around with a piece on you, at least one, is foolish. And you're safer in numbers. You're safer around the people that you know and that you trust. But certainly not in city environments. You're screwed. If you're in and around a city, good flipping luck. If you don't have, I mean, I'm not trying to shit on people. I'm just saying, you're in closer proximity to what's likely to pop off. You're going to see a random fire more so than somebody who's living in a rural area who can contain it a little quicker if one were to actually happen. That's all. You're closer to the crime. You're closer to the diversity, we'll say. And that's, that was your choice. People made those choices a long time ago. I detest the city for a variety of reasons. You couldn't pay me to live in or around a city. No chance. Certainly not now. But again, those are just some examples. Now, let me mention this example. This is interesting too, I think, because I've brought this up before. And the irony of this, by the way, is remarkably overwhelming, but I'm not surprised in the slightest. When I read this, I didn't get a huge smile on my face and say, well, geez, this is so shocking. I can't believe it. What is actually happening? This is very predictable. The very high school in the neighboring town where I live, not in my town, but the town next door, which is Hamilton, Ohio. Hamilton High School is where I conducted my dissertation research on the subject of violence and manipulation through professional development, and how violence prevention professional development is actually detrimental to the entire school environment for a variety of reasons, including the demoralization of the staff members who work there, because it doesn't actually prevent violence. It does quite the opposite. And this is intentional by our government and by three-letter agencies and NGOs. It's mass manipulation. So just yesterday, which would have been, August 12th, here's the headline from Channel 9 ABC WCPO out of Cincinnati. Hamilton High School sending students home early after bomb threat. Are we surprised about this? No. Are they going to catch the person? No. Quote unquote, possible bomb threat. I'll read the story, but just to review, this is conducted by three-letter agencies, the CIA, FBI, etc., probably the ATF, and it's all done either with them, with their knowledge, or they use one of their local individuals to then place a message via email using a virtual protection network or a phone call via a virtual protection network, in an effort, of course, to not be able to catch the person, which, of course, leads the police to say, well, they used a VPN. There's no way we can find out who actually did this, and we'll probably never find them. That's their excuse, because that's all it takes to call one of these in. And they know that. That's why they are the ones, three-letter agencies in our government, are the ones that call in these bomb threats 9 times out of 10. That's why they never catch them, because they would have to catch themselves. And why would they do that? They wouldn't. It's all designed for ritualistic trauma. It's all designed to ramp up people's blood pressure. So here's the story, and here's what it said. Hamilton, Ohio. Hamilton High School is closing early due to an abundance of caution, quote unquote. The students are being released early, according to an email sent from Hamilton City Schools to parents Monday afternoon. The district said staff at the high school received multiple threatening calls, indicating a possible bomb threat at around 12:30 p.m. on Monday. The district contacted the Hamilton Police Department and evacuated the high school. Police are performing a sweep of the building, the district said. Still, all high school students will be dismissed early Monday. The district said it would strongly encourage all students to take their bus home, but parents who want to pick up their child themselves can enter off Northwest Washington Boulevard. After parents pick up their children, they will be guided through to the Eaton Avenue exit. No other entrances to the school property will be available, the district said. Students who left belongings inside the school building won't be able to retrieve those items until police have finished their search of the building. The district said that will most likely not happen until late Monday night or early Tuesday evening. After all school events and programs at Hamilton High School are canceled for Monday, according to the district. It said, according to a schedule posted on social media by Hamilton City School District, Monday was the first day of school for some students. Only students in the district with last names beginning with A through K started classes Monday. That's stupid. Students, I don't know why they would do that. Students with last names beginning L through Z are scheduled to have their first day Tuesday, and all students begin class together Wednesday. Okay. It doesn't matter. It's all ritualized trauma. It's being done most assuredly by government themselves. And even local police don't have to know this because they're stupid too. And some of them may be in on it. And some of them probably aren't. See, in situations like this, you don't need everybody to be a participant, because the fight or flight response takes over with these individuals, and they're more likely to believe it than not, because their job requires them to be on a fight response, not a flight response. And when those heightened emotions take over, not everybody's thinking clearly nor thinking deeper into it as to why it's happening. Not to mention, it happened on the first day of school for those who had the last, their last names start with A through K or whatever the hell it was. So as a result of that, from a justification standpoint, they would say, well, this is only being done because it's the first day of school. Well, maybe. Or maybe it's being done because they know how easily manipulated all of you are. And I'll even add this. Apparently, they first evacuated all of the students out of the building onto the football field. So they took all of the students from one collective area and actually put them in another area where they're even closer to one another during a so-called bomb threat. Does that make sense? The people who work in these environments cannot manage this level of chaos because it's scripted. They can't manage regular chaos, let alone 2D, 3D, 4D, 5D manipulation from their own government. They can't handle it. They can't manage it. They don't have a grasp of evil. They don't have a grasp of social engineering. They don't have a grasp of mass manipulation. Not a clue. But what will happen on Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday of this week? Parents will send their kids right back to school as if nothing happened. Because even the parents will justify their stance and say, well, it was probably some disgruntled former graduate or some kid who got expelled who wanted to just stick it to Hamilton High School. Probably not. That's probably not what it came from. It's a constant reminder to school environments that you are at the whim of government. If they say jump and you don't say how high, we'll make you jump by making a phone call or an email anonymously using a virtual protection network, and then you'll buy it hook, line, and sinker. And the emotional trauma that has taken place has already taken place. So mission accomplished. Then they have you right where they want you. And then what will that lead to? More professional development, which does what? Re-traumatizes and demoralizes everybody who works in the building again. And then it's just one more thing for all of them to do and one more thing for all of them to implement. Over and over and over again. They're not learning. And parents still sending their children to these environments are not learning. If you have communism in a country, you don't send your children to the school environment that allows for it. Honest to God, I can't believe I had to even say that. I can't believe it. If it was a movie theater, if it was a restaurant, if it was anything where violence occurred with any sense of regularity, you would stop going permanently. But not if it's a school. No. You keep sending them back. Am I surprised? Of course not. In fact, to show you the depth of this, from both a state government standpoint and this mass manipulation and this mass communistic control that exists, and even a financial standpoint, I have two more and two final education stories to bring up here. The first is going to test your recall. In particular, if you've listened to this show since 2021 and 2022. You may recall a series of episodes, at least I think 9 episodes, where I had Vanessa Hurst on as a guest. Vanessa Hurst is a mother and a wife who lives in Nelson County, Kentucky, and was going after their school board and their superintendent for mask wearing and financial irregularities that were taking place and closing down one of their schools and removing students into another school, and a million other things. I mean, you talk about corruption, it was everywhere. The superintendent of that school district in Nelson County, Kentucky, was a guy by the name of Wes Bradley. Again, total dirtbag. He's in this, again, he comes through this entire cesspool and pipeline of communistic do-gooders who don't have an original thought and try to talk like a good old boy and lie through their teeth and put a smile on their face and claim that they care about the safety, security, and education of all their students and all those other lies, because that's all they know how to do. They're pathological. So back in March of this year, the school board fired him. They, I believe, got the majority of so-called patriots on the school board, and they cut him loose. In the middle of all of that, he still had supporters who came to his aid, which is shocking because he was a known liar. He was a known fraudster. We documented it in numerous episodes on this show over the course of a great deal of time. But at the end of that, back in March, when they cut him loose, they openly stated, the news did anyway, that Wes Bradley was going to appeal this ruling with the Kentucky Department of Education to keep his job. And he did. And the the Kentucky Department, rather, of Education ruled that the board had no standing to cut him loose. So what did they do as a Department of Education in Kentucky? They reinstated Wes Bradley. 1 month later, back in April. So that right there should prove to people that if you think you can just get an elected official or patriot elected officials onto a board to cut out all of the riffraff, you can't. I mean, you've got to have some serious illegality. You've got to have stone cold proof. And even if you did, that may not work either. Why? Because it's government. It's still state-run government. And state-run government gets to do and say basically whatever they want. And you have to just put up with it as long as you're participating in state-run and local-run government. It doesn't apply to you or your life or your children if you're not even attending and participating in those government games. But when you do, you're going to always be victimized and lied to and taken advantage of by government because that's what government does. Now, with that said, I assume Wes Bradley is still there. I think he's still on the books. But the remedy, as far as the Kentucky Department of Education was concerned, is they basically said that they had hired a Let's All Get Along committee from the state to go to Nelson County to train everybody there, in particular school board members and Wes Bradley, that they all need to work together, put aside their differences, and get along. So what was their solution to a school board trying to get rid of a corrupt superintendent? The state's solution was to reinstate the very criminal himself and then bring in their own outside professional development to retrain, quote unquote, or re-educate everybody who works there, certainly the school board themselves, into all agreeing with Wes Bradley or getting along with them, or all of them getting along with one another until at least his contract is up. Because the only other option they have now is they catch him having sex with a kid, they catch him with a needle sticking out of his arm, or they wait until his contract is up and then they don't re-up his contract and then they cut him loose. That's essentially it. Because he's already broken his contract. He's already violated his codes of conduct. He's already engaged in conduct on becoming an educator as a license holder. But this is what happens when you rely on the state. You play the state's games, you're always going to lose. You go up against the state, as I have, against two departments of education, you're not going to win in the game of winning and losing as they see it. They're going to beat you, but they're not going to beat you in the long run. This is where the government always overplays their hand, and this is even where Satan overplays his hand. He always thinks that they'll win in the long run. More and more people wake up in the long run. It just depends on whether or not those people are staying alive and staying aware of what's going on. If they're not, well, then back to the matrix for them. Then they're going to be victimized. The next story I have here, again, is very typical. It has to do with finances, and this was sent to us from our Louisiana educator. Hope to have them back on the show, by the way, because I believe they are now retired, which is great, or certainly retiring here in the upcoming months. But here's what it says, and this was from their local paper. It was titled, "School Board Faces a Budget Hurdle." Yep, because they all do. And it says the following, quote, "The St. Landry Parish School Board's finance director said the school district faces a $5.2 million deficit in the 2024-25 budget." It says finance director Sean Grantham, I'm saying that right, prefaced a nearly 4-hour meeting Thursday with an observation. The board members were going to have a difficult and uncomfortable conversation. It says, quote, "The budget is not balanced," unquote, she said. Of the budget for the July 2024 to June 30, 2025 fiscal year. A budget presented at the meeting shows $11.4 million dollar deficit in the general fund, but $6.2 million of that is from the ESSER funding. That must be paid. The Elementary and Secondary School Emergency Relief Fund has been used to pay for student remediation, teacher training, and facility improvements since the COVID pandemic. Now, quick little side note, what does that have to do with preventing COVID? Nothing. Because there is no COVID, and the ESSER CARES Act money that went out to schools was the largest K-12 money laundering that's ever taken place in the history of American K-12 institutions and education, so to speak. And they all participated in it. But remember, as I've said before, if everybody's laundering money, then money laundering isn't against the law. If everybody's murdering and everybody's raping and everybody's stealing, it's not against the law. And if government says you can do it and it's sanctioned by government, well, it's not a crime. It was all money laundering. And now they're paying for it because they have to give some of that money back. It goes on here. It says the system worked with the school districts spending money and then being reimbursed through the State Department of Education. Grantham said she has been telling the board for months that it needs to cut $3.4 million from the district's budget. However, she said, "I couldn't find $3.4 million to cut from the budget." Oh my God. It's amazing. It's amazing. These school districts never thought that the diversity, equity, and inclusion crap and all of that lie and all the technological advancements, quote unquote, that they've implemented, that all of this was going to back up on them. They always spend like it's going out of style. And then when it goes out of style, they say, wait a minute, we've got all this stuff and all these people that we have to maintain, but we don't have any money to maintain it. Well, whose fault's that? These people are so stupid, they fall for it hook, line, and sinker every time. It goes on. It says, let's see here, Superintendent Milton Batiste III, there's a name, has been working on the budget book. She said his budget modifications, quote unquote, were handed out to the board members at the meeting. The modifications evidently include staffing reductions to reflect student counts. Yep. Always got to get rid of people because less people are sending their kids to these terrible, terrible places. Not to mention you don't have the money to maintain them. So what do you expect to do? You have to cut people. It says Batiste would not make the information given to the board public, But he did give some examples of staffing cuts and savings during discussions. The difficulty facing the board was highlighted by board member Hazel Sias, if I'm saying that right, saying it is not feasible for the board to go through the whole budget. Well, you could, that's your job, but you don't want to do it, and that's understandable. It says, and board member Tiffany Nolan said the board is ending up in the weeds. It's because you're not smart people. It says that was the point also made by Grantham. Quote, I work with a lot of boards, and you all are the only board that goes this deep into the weeds, unquote, she said. Now they're eating each other alive. I love it. Somebody asks a question, they don't have the answer, and then they accuse each other of asking too many questions and 1,000 other things. It goes on, it says, quote, other boards, you give them the budget. You trust your finance person and your head person have done the work, unquote, she said. She noted that at the first St. Landry Parish School Board meeting she ever attended, the board spent 25 minutes going over $500 line items. Quote, your superintendent that you hired, trust me, he wants this money, right? He wants this money right, she said. Total budget expenditures are $207 million, and revenues are $218 million. The numbers include local, state, and federal funds. A public hearing on the budget is scheduled for September 5th during the regular board meeting, unquote. They're screwed. I've been over this on this show. I've laid this out in a way that many others have not. I'm patting myself on the back on this. You're not going to get Chris Rufo talking about this shit. You're not going to get Chaya Ratchik at Libs of TikTok covering this. The financial collapse of American K-12 education is here. It's been here for a long time. The writing is on the wall. No one's buying the product. Only the brainwashed are, and there are becoming less and less of them by the minute. Shot taking, people waking up on their own, illness, death, etc., etc. That's all the reasons why people are leaving. Lack of safety in these places, government manipulation, the list is endless. But when that all exists in a business that is responsible for hundreds of millions of dollars in just one district, you cannot keep that afloat financially. You can't. And if they all fall or start to fall around the same time, ladies and gentlemen, you don't have state education officials at the state government who are going to be able to manage what's going on. They aren't going to be able to figure this out either. They're not going to be able to show up into these districts and start to figure out what's really happening and what's taking place and try to alleviate something. There's no chance. I've said it here before, I'll say it again. Brick and mortar schools are going to be left for the physically handicapped and the mentally disabled. A time will come where that will be the case. It will not be for those students who are awake, literate, and can comprehend. It won't be for them. They will eventually figure out that going your own way as an individual within your own family is the healthiest alternative because it's always been the healthiest alternative. But if you want to send them back into the government meat grinder that can't balance the budget, overspends all of the time, steals from taxpayers by giving themselves raises as superintendents and colluding boards and treasurers and so on, and then falls for every single government gimmick like diversity, equity, and inclusion, social emotional learning, and all that other horse shit. If they do all of that, they're done. They're done as a family, as a so-called child student, and of course the district is finished. This is happening in small districts, big districts, and everybody in between, all across the nation. And there isn't a piece of chewing gum thick enough to fill that leak in that wall, in the so-called foundation that is American education, government-run American education. Nothing can fix this. Which means you're left with what then? Oh no, you're left with your own decisions. No, not those. not, not your own decision making. We can't have that. Thinking as an individual and circling the wagons as a family? No, we've never done that before as a human race. What are we supposed to do? I thought we were supposed to just rely on government all the time. If everybody pulled their heads out of their asses, all of this would go away. Their lives would become far more simple. But the more they continue to just lean on government and yell at government and depend on government, sorry, you're going to be the victim of the stupidity and brainwashing of government every single time. Now, with all of that said, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to wrap up this episode now, and I'm going to air my conversation with Christine in a separate episode. So it's going to be two separate things here. But make sure and stay tuned for that one also, and give that a listen, and make sure you give that a share also. With that said, everybody, again, thank you for listening, and I'll catch you in the next one. Peace. Thank you for listening to American Education FM. Make sure and check out AmericanEducationFM.com for more information. Take care and God bless.